Kathy, thanks very much. On Friday's edition of the programme, we heard from the UN's humanitarian coordinator in Yemen about the latest catastrophe to strike that impoverished country, a place which has already experienced more than 2 years of a civil war. Jamie McGoldrick told us about the problems that the UN and other agencies were facing as they tried to tackle a major cholera epidemic which broke out in April.
We're trying to deliver services in places, but we need resources, which we don't have. It's very, very difficult because the systems don't exist. Salaries have not been paid to health workers since August last year. So we have to try and find ways of paying incentives for them to come to work. The difference between people surviving and not surviving is money. Most people in the country don't have jobs. Over 1 million civil servants haven't been paid. So there is no purchasing power available to buy drugs, to pay doctors, to get health services delivered. So all of that's compounding a situation which is collapsing because of the war and the conflict and the economic and other collapses of systems as well.
Fighting between the government, backed by a Saudi-led coalition, and Houthi rebels supported by Iran shows no sign of ending. At least 5,000 civilians have been killed since 2015, a third of them children. Our correspondent Orla Guerin is one of the very few international journalists who have made it into Yemen. She's just sent us this report from Aden.
It's early morning and we're approaching the coast of Yemen. I can see jagged peaks up ahead. That's the port of Aden. It's very hard to enter the country and to tell the story of what's happening here. It's the Saudi-led coalition who controls who comes and who goes. The Saudis are limiting access for journalists. They prevented us from flying in, so we found a way in by boat. The strict controls on journalists entering the country are one of the reasons why you hear so little about what is the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. Well, we've just arrived at the cholera treatment centre in the Al Sadaka hospital. One urgent case has just been brought in. There's an elderly man on the bed in front of me. He looks very weak, very gaunt. There are 3 nurses who have attached drips to his body and they are holding the bags of saline solution, trying to squeeze the fluid into his body. The elderly patient, Abdullah Mohammed Salim, was brought in with no pulse and revived in front of our eyes. His son Ahmed had a message for those in power who are busy waging war. Fix the sewage, he said, and clean the streets. There are flies and mosquitoes everywhere, causing illness. We are demanding everyone who claims to be our leader to just take care of the people. The UN says cholera is today's crisis, but famine is tomorrow's. Hunger is already menacing a generation of Yemeni children. Malnutrition rates have soared since the war. Well, we're now in the malnutrition department, and on the bed in front of me there's a very tiny baby boy. His ribs are painfully visible. He looks too weak to even open his eyes. His mum is standing by the bed, trying to keep the flies away from him. Doctors tell me his name is Ahmed Mohammed Ahmed, and he's 10 months old, but he weighs only 4 kilograms. They say he should be twice that weight. He's one of so many children. Malnutrition was always a problem in Yemen, but rates of severe acute malnutrition doubled after the war. Well, we've just come to the intensive care department with Dr. Adina Ahmed Salim. We came to see one of her patients, but we've just had some bad news. Doctor, tell me what's happened with your patient.
Unfortunately, my patient died before 1 hour. She is 9 months, her weight 3 kilo, 9 months. She's improved 1 day, then a fever, convulsion 2nd day, then today die.
Must be very difficult for you. You see children facing so many problems.
I feel difficult for me when I treat patients and feel he will improve and then he will die. Because we are dealing with children, I feel like my daughter, my son. So that's very difficult for us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Tamam.
Thank you. Shukran. Hello, madam. We've come to visit a family whose home was destroyed by an airstrike by the Saudi-led coalition. We're in the district of Lahaj. We've passed a lot of damage on the way here. Left and right along the road, there were buildings flattened by airstrikes. This family is living in very difficult circumstances. We've come to meet them in a public library, and this is what they now call home. The women are all standing in the doorway. They're veiled, but they're waving to meet us. Inside, the grandmother of the house, Saoud Nagy, told us they are in danger of losing even this temporary shelter. Local officials keep telling them to move on. Well, we've now been brought to see the house, or what's left of it. It's a 2-story structure. The roof is completely gone. The windows are gone. There's a huge pile of masonry and brick out in front. Some clothes and belongings scattered here, some children's shoes. The house isn't habitable anymore, but some of the relatives are trying to live here because they have nowhere else. We're just making our way now towards the inside. It's extremely dark, there's no electricity. About 30 members of the family became homeless when the airstrike happened here. But civilians here have been under fire from both sides. We met Adil and her children waiting for food aid. Her 10-year-old son, Imad, used to love football before he was hit by a Houthi shell. I brought the kids into the house, she told us, and asked them to stay inside. They went into the living room, and that's where they were hit. He lost both legs immediately. Many Yemenis say there are others with blood on their hands, including Britain and the US, who continue selling arms to the Saudis. Here's Shaimat Besayed, a local journalist. What would you say, Shaimat, to the countries that are selling the weapons to the Saudis, including Britain and the United States?
I want to tell them that your people, they live in peace, so why don't want others to live in war? It's very difficult that you are a very development countries and you talk about human rights and all this stuff, and why just you allow wars to keep going in those poor countries? It's confused, really. When you talk about human rights and future and all this stuff, and you still sell bombs to destroy others people. We are humans, so, and we understand. We are not foolish people here. We understand everything. So we want to tell them that stop the war.
And that report from Yemen was by Orla Guerin.